whatever time you have, Amy. Well, I'll call to order Woodstock's Planning and Zoning Commission meeting for June 15, 2023. I'll go through the roll call. First will be commissioners who are here, then I'll recognize the commissioners who are virtual. Start with Dwight. You mind starting?
Dwight Ranowitz, Tim Young, Joseph Adeletta,
Dean Gould,
Sid Blanton,
Jeff Gordon,
Jeff Marcotte,
Joe Palula.
and online David Morse
Here,
and Mark.
David Moore.
Are you with us? Mark? Can you hear us, Mark? Okay. We'll see if we're able to get him connected.
Yeah, I'm
Okay,
trying to do this from my cell phone. It's not working real well, so don't count me in. I'm just gonna try to listen in after.
so we won't list you then as seated. Is that what you want, Mark? Yes, that's what you wanted. Okay. Just say,
What's that again?
you just want us to list you as not seated.
That's correct.
Okay. So we'll note that in the record, Amy. And I'll note it here. Okay, that takes us then, we do have a quorum, which is good. That takes us to designation of alternates. In fact, we do need two alternates. And it looks like we do, so without objection, I'll seek Dwight Reinowitz and Dean Gould. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Put that here. Okay, that takes us to agenda item 1C, which is pledge of allegiance. My chair's report is very quick. My usual thank yous to commissioners and for staff for the work that's done. So we do appreciate it. Otherwise, I don't have anything else right now to report. That isn't otherwise later on the agenda to go through. So we'll reserve that if needed for later. We have agenda item 3, citizens' comments. Are there any comments from citizens not on the agenda? Yes, can you please state your name for the record?
My name is Brian Linton. I lived in town about 13 years. I've been to a fair number of these meetings. And there's often a note about how the commission appreciates input from the residents of Woodstock. So early April, I submitted some information to the commission, and the commissioners have been prohibited from seeing this information. Now, my document is currently upstairs. It's stored away in the business office. It's a public document. Dan Mallow told me that he would distribute it to the commission. Julia Fay said that she would share it with the commission. The only reason that the commissioners have not seen this, according to Dan Mallow, is quote, chair's discretion. Dan Mallow also suggested that a resident can read information into the public record during citizen comment. Now, the information I provided is 5 pages, so I think it's much more prudent to provide you a paper copy, which I'm happy to do tonight, unless there's some reason to continue to suppress the commissioners obtaining information from the public.
Well, thank you for being here. I will say, we weren't suppressing anything and wasn't my discretion to withhold anything. It was mentioned earlier that because of the particulars of the matter at hand, when we were dealing with a preliminary discussion based upon advice given to the commission, we weren't able to release anything, including some documents that came in from other members of the public. Once that matter was all, I guess, adjudicated and dealt with, and that there was no application that was then subsequently coming to this commission. I did as chair, have further behind the scenes discussion with some of the same folks who I had to have discussions with before. And that decision then was that we could release it. And my understanding was that Dan Malo, in his capacity as zoning enforcement officer before he left, was going to send that out to commissioners. So that did not happen. I was not aware of that. And we can certainly get that out to commissioners. There's some other documents from some other members of the public, and they had been notified of the situation as well, that the land use office does have. And so if those documents weren't distributed to commissioners, and I don't know, it sounds like they weren't, then we can certainly ask the land use department to send them out to commissioners. If that didn't happen, it may have just not happened as Dan Malo was transitioning out of the zoning enforcement office and the new temporary DEOs were coming. So if that happened, that was something that was purposeful, no suppression. It wasn't my discretion to suppress anything. That's inaccurate. So we can certainly get that stuff out to commissioners. I think there's documents you submitted and 2 documents from some others who were notified as well of the situation. And we can get those out to commissioners.
Am I permitted to give commissioners a paper copy tonight?
You'd have to give it to me. And then I can
Distribute it
distribute it.
tonight?
If you give it to me, I'll see what it is and see if I can.
It is the exact version of the information that I sent to you on August 5th.
You can give it to me. I'll take a look at it certainly. And again, if things weren't sent out by the land use department, I'll follow up with the land use department and see that it does get sent out, but they were given the okay to have sent it out. So I assumed it had gone out.
As of, I believe, March 5th, I was told by Dan Malo that it was put into the building office due to quote chair's discretion.
Again, as was explained, I know to you at a meeting, and I believe also separately, at the time, we couldn't distribute it based upon how we had to handle the matter, and that was also at the time explained to the commission. After that matter was all taken care of, I did as chair look further into it to see what more to do about it, and the situation had changed because that matter had been resolved. And there was no application then that was being submitted to us. And so then I had notified Dan Malo that documents could be released to commissioners and, you know, otherwise given out. Again, nothing against Dan, but if that didn't happen, it may just not have made his list to send out before he left. And then a new crew came in, and I assumed, you know, that all of that had been done or relayed to the new crew. So now that I'm aware it didn't go out, which I didn't suppress anything, I can talk with the land use department, which would be, well, I have to talk with them on Monday because we're not open on Fridays, and see about the documents coming out to the commission.
So when should I expect the commissioners to be able to see?
What you're giving to me right now,
They're the paper copies in front of you right now.
I don't have a problem distributing it right now. This is not on for us to discuss tonight.
It is not.
So, so I can distribute it. What we will note is that we received this from you. Do we have enough copies for commissioners?
I believe there are 10 copies.
Well, that's not enough for commissioners. Okay.
So we certainly already have a copy.
Well, I'll get a copy of this because I'll verify that it's the same as what was submitted. So we can do our complete record keeping, but there's not enough for commissioners, but we do have some commissioners who are virtual, but we're going to be emailing stuff out anyway if it didn't get emailed out, so everybody will get stuff. So, and I'll talk with the land use department. They reopen on Monday, and I'll talk with them that if it didn't get sent out, as I had asked to do, I'm not blaming them, I'll ask it again.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. We'll distribute this out, but we'll note for the folks who don't have it, that will, here's Jeff. We're gonna be emailing stuff out anyway. So. And again, we did follow a process that we were required to follow legally, and that had been explained to the commission before about it. Hold on. You. Thank you for coming tonight. Anything else from citizens' comments, not on anything pertaining to the agenda? Okay, that takes us to meeting minutes. We actually have 3 sets of meeting minutes. We have May 4th, May 18th, and June 1st. What is the will of the commission?
I vote to approve the May 4th, because I was here for that one.
So just that one initially? Because we can take them separately if we need to.
Second.
So your motion by Tim Young, seconded by, that was you, Joe Adaletta, is to approve the meeting minutes of May 4th. Do we have any discussion? Okay. Since we have some commissioners virtual, I'll go through the roll. Joe Adaletta?
Aye.
Excuse me. Sid Blodgett?
It's absent, so I do abstain.
Jeff Gordon, I was not present, so I'm going to abstain. Dean Gould?
Aye.
Jeff Marcotte?
Aye.
David Morse?
Aye.
Joe Palula?
Aye.
Dwight Reinowitz?
Aye.
And Timothy Young? Without objection, that passes. That takes us to, we have meeting minutes from May 18th, and I know some people were present, some weren't. Probably is easier just for us to take each one separately. Some people may abstain from one and not the other, just because of looking at the attendance.
I move we accept the minutes from May 18th. I'll second that.
So that was you, Joe Palulek, made the motion, and Dwight Reinowitz seconded. Do we have any discussion or corrections on that one? That's the May 18th meeting minute. Okay. I'll go through the roll. Joe Adaletta.
Aye.
Sid Blodgett.
Abstain.
Jeff Gordon, yes. Dean Gould.
Abstain.
Jeff Marcotte.
Aye.
David Morse.
Aye.
Aye.
Dwight Reinowitz.
Aye.
And Timothy Young.
I abstain.
Without objection, that passes. I guess that takes us to meeting minutes of June 2nd. First, I'm sorry.
Move to accept the minutes as presented.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
So that's a motion made by Dean Gould, seconded by Dwight Reinowitz to approve the meeting minutes of June 1st. Do we have any discussion or correction? Hearing none, I'll go through the roll. Joe Adaletta.
Aye.
Blodgett.
Aye.
I was absent, so I'm going to abstain. Dean Gould.
Aye.
Jeff Marcotte.
Aye.
David Morse.
Aye.
Joe Palula.
I have to abstain.
Dwight Reinowitz.
Aye.
And Timothy Young.
Abstain.
Without objection, then so passes. And we'll note another unbroken string of approved meeting minutes. You'll get some awards someday. That takes us to new business. We have 2 new business items. Some of it was in the meeting packets, and I think some of it came out by email. Some of it, did you send some things on this, Celia?
Yes, I reviewed it.
The first one is new business 5A. This is number 3069014M, David Dairy, 37 Town Farm Road, lot line adjustment of the food subdivision. You reviewed this, Celia?
Yeah.
So I'll start as I usually do with you as staff. Is anything that you wanted to discuss with us?
So you should have gotten my review memo dated June 12th. I actually can't recall if it went in the packet or if it was emailed to you, but you should have it one way or the other. I reviewed the subdivision. It was titled Hilltop, owned by Robert E. Larson and Mary P. Larson. It was approved on January 8th, 1991. There were conditions of approval, but nothing involving these two lots. Currently, the two lots that are the subject of the application have been developed. The home on 33 Town Farm Road was built in 97. The home on 37 Town Farm Road was built in 92. And it's my understanding the health department submitted to the health department for their B100A, and they have since received approval. I do have it on writing here in the file.
I'll just note it for record, this is June 15th. That the NDDH granted their approval. Thank you.
Yes, and so the purpose that the health department reviewed it was to make sure that the change in the boundary line didn't infringe on the septic system or the reserve area for each house and septic system. This is the simplest kind of application we see, and in this case, it's taking a very small portion of one lot and merging it into the neighboring lot. Both lots will exceed the minimum lot size by far, so I have no concerns about compliance. And the applicant's representative is here if you'd like to speak with him.
So you're otherwise okay?
Yeah.
And my understanding is, having talked with the land use department, that all applicable fees have been paid. So we'll note that for the record. Happy to hear. If you would like,
Sure.
welcome again to the commission. If you don't
Thank you.
mind just stating your name for the record.
Absolutely.
We have stuff up electronically
Yeah,
that
I,
will also
I
share on the
I
screen.
have my board here, but I guess it's just as easy to refer to it electronically.
If you don't mind, because we have commissioners who are gonna only see it electronic, so we'll just go with what we have electronic.
That works fine for me.
So,
All right, as Delia said, we've got the two lots, 33 and 37.
if you don't
Town,
mind just stating your
my
name.
apologies. Norm Tebow, Killingly Engineering. I'm a licensed professional engineer and partner at the firm. So lots number 33 and 37 Town Farm Road. 37 is Mr. David Deary. And the adjacent lot, number 33, the owners are going to be listing their property for sale. And Mr. Deary has a garden on that adjoining property. And they've had an understanding over the years that it was, that it did belong to the abutting property owner, but now he's going to sell the property, and Mr. Deary just wants to keep his garden there. So they came to an agreement to transfer that approximately 0.8 acres of land to the Deary parcel. It will result in both of the properties being over 10 acres in area. Fairly simple. The actual boundary itself is pretty well defined by natural conditions, because there is a stone wall that is going to be used as one of the demarking boundaries. And the sketch that you see behind Delia right now, you see that green line right there. The plan that we submitted to this commission was actually the darker line with the angle in it. Earlier today, Mr. Deary called me and said that he and his neighbor had the discussion, and he would prefer that there are actually 2 rows of trees there. And the neighbor who he is doing the boundary line adjustment with would prefer to have the lines, the green line that is shown there in lieu of the angled line. So the plan that we submitted to you is the angled line, but what is actually going to be filed on the land record ultimately is where the green line is actually shown.
So if I just may ask, it's important that we actually have and know what the current copy is. We're here to make.
Yeah, I did bring hard,
We have,
I brought hard copies of the revised plan this evening.
that's dated when,
That is dated today.
okay? Do we have copies we can distribute? Since evidently the copies we have are not the correct copies.
Correct.
We're,
I think if you compare them to
were we
what you have,
notified ahead of time the change, or this is the first?
we found out about it literally about noontime today. I received an email asking for the line to be to be modified.
Have enough for everybody? Go.
No, we can share amongst three.
There's an electronic copy we have.
Yeah.
That-
Okay. All right. Okay. So go ahead. I just want to know that for the record that the property commissioner received is now not the correct copy that we're going to be asked to act
Correct.
on due to a copy being provided to us on the spot.
Right, so what had happened was, when we went out into the field to do the survey, the two property owners had placed stakes at the points where they wanted the property line to be. They had placed stakes, we located the stakes, we drew the map, we submitted the application. And then literally, like I said, late this morning, right around noon time or so, Mr. Deary called me and he sent me a plan. He said, well, I was walking the proposed property line with my neighbor who I'm going to be obtaining the property from. And he decided that he didn't want that angle point there. He wanted to strike a straight line as that green line is shown. So it's essentially the same area, slightly less area that Mr. Deary is going to be obtaining. It was slightly over 0.8 acres previously, and now it's slightly under 0.8 acres. But I think the intention stays the same. It doesn't impact the areas, it doesn't impact the septic systems. The lots are still zoning compliant. In my opinion, it's a very minor modification, but obviously you as the commission have the discretion to decide whether or not that's true.
I think it's important then to state for the record, we need to know, and maybe it's up there to show, because it's part of the application submission requirement. What exactly is the acreage that we can see documentation of whatever, of all the different ones?
Yeah,
Do we have actual map then that shows all the revised?
yes, that's what you have right there. That's the entire map.
Electronic? Ophelia?
I don't have the entire map electronically. I only have this portion of it that I had sent to the owner just to make sure that was exactly what he wanted.
Well, I'm just gonna say from a process point of view, I have some commissioners on who don't have the ability to see the paper now.
I do have a full-size copy on the board. I don't know if y'all will actually.
I just want to make certain we're following the correct process, just because we're receiving something revised on the spot.
Absolutely,
So I just need to make certain,
I understand.
yes, Delia?
So just by what we're looking at on the correct paper copy, it's showing what's showing on the
It's
screen,
showing what's showing on the screen.
black and white.
Yes, what you see on the screen is what you have in front of you.
So we
Full
can
size.
show the entire, what you just gave us tonight.
I do not have the entire map on the screen. All I have the portion that was adjusted.
Go.
Just clarify, you said what we're seeing there. It's on what you
It's
just.
what you
handed out.
have right here. That line is the green.
Yeah, just people who can't see this map,
Yes,
what we're looking at is not exactly right here. There are little angle dots.
correct.
I understand what you're saying here, the
Mhm.
green line is now a black line, this
That is correct, sir.
black angle.
It's no longer. Yes.
So,
Do you have a scale ruler you can measure it for us and figure out the area of the cane?
it is, he already did that.
It looks like it's on there.
Yeah,
Yeah, I just want to make certain, well, let me ask David Morris. David? Are you okay? I know, given the circumstances. given to
Yeah,
us
I
last- Are
I
you
was just
okay?
gonna click in and say, yeah, I understand. I have the original map in front of me. And I can see the adjusted map on the screen there. So I understand what he's doing. So I'm all set with it.
So we can just,
and
as long as we're okay, because Mark, so, yes, well, Mark is not seated.
Sorry?
Yeah, because he's asked not to be seated because of some of the
Yeah,
AD that he set up, so I just want to make certain we're clear, because receiving it the way we're now receiving it, I need to make certain.
I
Normally, we
understand,
Try to get it all submitted.
Mhm.
You know, by our submission deadline, which was 10 days ago.
which,
But I
which
did-
is what we,
Yeah.
what we
I
did, but
know, we're
unfortunately.
trying to be flexible, so long as David Morton's okay,
I'm fine with it. I can see it. I understand what they're doing.
that's fine. As long as.
I'm all
he's
set.
okay. Go ahead,
I'm
Alexa.
fine with it.
Okay. A little clarification, the larger map is a little clearer. I thought that whole dark line was a stone wall, but the stone wall is only the straight section at 83 feet, 65.
Correct.
And this dark line is that,
There's a tree rubble line. It's actually a double line. There are some small trees and there are shrubs that really kind of goes right down the middle.
that would be pretty clear to the landowner.
Correct.
Okay.
And we're gonna be setting, pins as well.
And if I can just ask a question, is there anything else on this map we just received tonight for this application? Anything else different?
No,
So nothing else has changed whatsoever?
nothing else has changed.
Okay,
Well, of course, yes, the acreages have been updated based upon the new area. But that they're a result of that line being reconfigured.
So Jeff wanted to know what the difference was. This on the screen now is what was previously there,
this is
so you
the-
can see the difference.
Yep, I just wanted to know. So,
10,700 square, that's the area of the cane. I can't read what it says. I have to zoom in.
Right.
okay,
But it's very flat, on the old one, was 10.7 acres.
And now it's 10.73.
it's all documented.
Correct.
You put the revised date, which is June 15th, that you revised it, so we have that.
Yes, we did.
too.
Mhm.
Okay,
The
Okay,
difference,
yeah, I just want to make certain everyone is seeing what needs to be seen.
right. So I mean, we're talking about a little over 800 square feet of
Still, it's
difference.
a revised plan.
Sure, oh, absolutely.
Did you have anything else to present to us?
Not with this application. I'm here for the next one as well, but for this one,
Okay.
as long as the commission doesn't have any further questions, so.
I'll open up to commissioners then. Is there anything else from commissioners on this? Yes, Joe.
I'll just make the motion that we accept the application based upon the drawing dated June the 15th, 2023.
I'll second that.
Finish writing that down here. So motion by Joe Kulik, seconded, is that you, Dwight?
Yes, sir.
Seconded by Dwight Reinowitz to approve the application as presented, but using the revised plan map that's dated June 15th this year.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Any discussion on the motion?
I'll just ask for clarity, any of change in the documents that are acreages mentioned in the other hard copies of the documents, just to make sure any other application paperwork corrected to the current. Or maybe make that a part of the motion, if there are any other,
you mean on the application form,
if the
if that change can be made, it's not required, but it can be done.
Okay.
The application form doesn't last, the milers get filed in the records, with the town land record.
Okay.
The application form doesn't, eventually it'll get thrown out.
didn't want any conflict 10 years in the future when somebody looks at.
And we'll just make certain we have it clear which plan we're going with. So we have the application, but now we have the revised plan, 15. Received June 16th, so that way it's clear which plan we're using. You have something? Rich? Yes, please.
Yeah, I think you want to consider asking for a specific representation that both property owners are okay with it. You know, there was a subdivision and the guy owned both the lots, it's no big deal, but you just want it in the record with the other property owner.
The other property owner was the one who actually requested it.
Yep.
Yeah, so for the record, I can't state definitively that it was agreed upon by the applicant at the request of the property owner who he's obtaining the property from.
Is that good enough to suffice if we have that in the record?
I just wanted to make it part of the record.
Parties and everybody.
And then another thing too, that both parties had to provide, well, Mr. Deary, submitted the B100A to the health department, but they also had to submit or was a permission form from the adjacent property owner as well, in conjunction with the B100A. So both of the property owners have provided documentation to the Department of Health in order for them to approve the B100 as submitted.
So I have David Deary's signature. Do I have, the people who are selling their land, I have their signature?
It was a separate document that the health department,
But do we have it for our file?
I don't believe you do.
Okay, so we only have then, I'm just trying to understand, Delia, we have a legal signature of just one property owner, but not the second. So that could be an issue then. Don't we normally require
I
both?
thought we had both.
We have required both, and we had required to make certain all property owners have signed.
Get proof of it since there's proof that they have approved it. We just don't have the signature. Can we get the signature as a condition?
Or do we have to table and make certain we have legal signatures about the properties question before we take action? Which way is proper?
I think either way is proper. I just think you would have gotten the other person's signature on something 4 times.
I thought we had it.
Not from what we have in this packet. We don't have the second signature. So the options are we table it, in order to make certain we have a revised documentation that shows legal signatures of both. Or we decide how to handle this, and if we were to approve it, have it a condition that we have to receive the revised documents, it has to be verified, I guess, by you dealing with that. But
But then I would ask Joe Lulick if he'd be willing to amend his motion. Add the condition that the document having the signature of the abutting landowner be obtained and submitted to the land use office.
That's fine, yeah.
so let me just say, probably then the way to have it would be that we have approved the application as presented, but using the plans dated June 15th and received by this commission today at its meeting, with a condition that we receive the revised, I guess it's what, application, Celia? For the second property, legal property owner,
For consent, written consent.
yeah, which is somewhere supposed to be in this document.
Yeah, I do have,
As a condition of approval to be reviewed by you, Delia, since you've reviewed this application.
Yeah.
Is that okay with you? We're still in motion. So is that okay with you, Joe?
Yes, that's fine.
And Dwight, you seconded that. Are you okay with that?
yes.
Okay. Did you have something you wanted to say?
Just, I do have the consent form with me, that was signed, by the applicant and the adjacent property owner that was it's the health department. Would that be sufficient, or do you need it on the application to the town?
It needs to be on our application.
And it should probably be for what they're proving.
Correct.
Correct.
Yeah, because it doesn't matter somebody else's application. We have our town application that needs to be followed. So technically, we only have permission from one property. Not the second before. So in lieu of tabling for a month, I'd be willing to work with you depending on how this
And
motion
I'm willing
goes.
to do whatever you need me to do.
Okay, so that would help. I'll write that out anyway. So Do we have any other discussion on the motion before us? Okay. Then I'll go through the roll, and I just, before we do that, it's very clear then what it is that you have to get to us.
Yes, sir.
Okay, all right, thank you. I'll go through the roll then. Joe Adaletta?
Aye.
Sid Blodgett?
Aye.
Jeff Gordon, I'll say aye. Dean Gould?
Aye.
Jeff Markot?
All right.
David Morse?
Aye.
Joe Palula?
Aye.
Dwight Reynolds?
Aye.
Timothy Young?
Aye.
That so passes with that condition. So until it's received and Delia approves what's been submitted, it's not fully able to be acted.
Thank you for working with us.
Well, thank you for coming. Let me just make sure I got this written. You got that all? Amy? Okay, good. As long as you got it all that we're covered. Thank you. All right, that takes us then to agenda item 5B, which is number 6580623 Supreme Sheds and Barns 292 Route 169. This is a special permit application. I will note that this has been a pending enforcement matter for a very, very long time. We had spelled out that we wanted to receive a completed application last month, but we understood there were some circumstances, so we had moved as a commission into this month. So, and Delia, you reviewed this as well.
Excuse me, Jeff?
Yep.
Mr. Chairman? I
Yep.
have to recuse myself from this?
So we'll note that you're recused. Okay.
Thank you.
We'll note that. We're not gonna go into too much about this because we have to schedule a public hearing. But there's a few things I just wanted to ask, so it's on the record. Is this a complete application? As best as? Okay, and then my understanding is from the land use department, the applicable fees were paid for this. So, this is, because of the special permit, we have to schedule a public hearing, on this, unless there's anything you wanted to say to us, Jill, otherwise we'll reserve it for public hearing.
I just want to say if they did submit to the department and I am waiting their review, but it should not be complicated. It should not take too long.
So hopefully we'll receive it.
We've got a lot, so. They
Well-
turned this other one around pretty quickly for me, so.
Okay. That's good. So otherwise, then, if am I correct, that's the July 20th? No. When's the 4th? As far as the third Thursday,
21. Oh, no, it is the
20th.
July 20.
That would be our next meeting. I believe that's more than, what days do we have to give? We have to give 30 or 35 days. I think it meets both. It meets 30 days, definitely.
Very.
As far as any notices to anybody to have to,
Oh, no,
okay, good.
it's not on a town boundary.
So then we're fine. But so we're covered.
Which.
Will do. So we have to, then that's the earliest we can schedule this for is our monthly business meeting, Thursday, July 20th, and we usually been scheduling them at 7:45 PM. Unless the commission wishes to do it at a different time. Or different date. Or both, but I'll open it up to what the commission wishes to do.
I move to schedule a public hearing for this matter on July 20th at 7:45 PM. Second.
You seconded it. Okay. So that's the, so we'll schedule a public hearing on July 20th. At 7:45 PM, and of course, it'll be here. So motion made by Jeff Markot, seconded by Timothy Young. Did we have any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, I'll go through the roll then. Joe Adaletta. Aye. Sid Blodgett.
Aye.
Jeff Gordon, aye. Dean Gould.
Aye.
Jeff Markot.
Aye.
David Morse.
I recuse myself from this.
Oh, that's right, you did, thank you. Joe Palula,
Aye.
he's not present. Dwight Reinowitz.
Aye.
Timothy Young. Right. That so passes, so we have that scheduled. Ideally, we'd like to still follow the submission deadline, which is 10 days before that Monday, the week before, so if there are any additional things that you are submitting to us, that we could get it in by then, that would be great, because we have to get packets out to everybody.
Right.
And so everybody on the commission has enough.
I would
lead time to
imagine I have to
review.
get you certified mail receipts by that time.
Everything that's required, we would need to have.
Okay.
Yep. So, thank you.
Thank you.
So. We'll see you again next month.
Yes, you will. Have a nice evening. Have
You
a nice,
too.
have a nice 4th of July.
Yes, you too. Okay. That takes us, we have no preliminary discussion, is my understanding. Just for, unless there's an objection, because we do have some things. Since we are gonna want to talk about commercial cannabis, I don't know how long that will go. I want to make certain we have free time for that, so without objection, I just want to go through, agenda item 8, which is CEO reports. So we can, so that way we'll have reports to look at and any discussion or no discussion depending upon it. So unless there's any objection, I'll just move that up. The other stuff is, I wouldn't say not important, but it's stuff that we can readily deal with pretty quickly at the end of the meeting. But I did want to get into. I had asked for the CEO to send us some reports, and there was an additional update that I had asked for, and hence why I had emailed out yesterday a memo from the CEO, because I had received it yesterday. So, so that went out. We do have our CEO on with us. Nice to see you, John Lukowski. Thanks for joining us by Zoom tonight.
Happy to be with you.
So I'm just gonna go through the office stuff as we normally do, and then we can pivot back to commercial cannabis and whatever else needs to be done. So we have the office. Is there anything from your point of view, John, as far as how things are running in the land use department? I forget what hours and what days you guys are there at the office.
We are generally there on Monday mornings and Wednesday later afternoons. Wednesday is a late day at Town Hall, so we're there later in the afternoon. We are also available via email at any time, and things are going all right. I would note that there is, I think, as we noted, as you noted earlier in the discussion, when there was some question of public dissemination of some documents that were distributed. We're still going through some transition pains a little bit, particularly administratively as to who is responsible for posting agendas, distributing packets, because Tracy, our admin, is also relatively new to the process. So it would be good to just make sure that everyone is on the same page between you, the chairman, and the commission, Delia, Tracy, and ourselves as zoning enforcement officer, just so we don't inadvertently drop anything. But you know, we're familiar with the town, we're familiar with the regulations, and we're happy to help out.
Well, I'm happy to talk further with you, John, as far as what the process we follow. I know I had meetings prior when Dan Mailer was the CEO with Tracy, as far as what happens with meeting packets and posting of agendas and all that other stuff, but happy to go over that again to clarify. You know, make certain everybody's on the same page, so just let me know, and I'm happy to talk or meet with you guys. That's not a problem at all, but thank you for the work you're doing in the office, coming on board with us. We do have a report that you sent us about permits that were issued, so we do have that listed. Unless anybody has any questions about those. That's separate from enforcement and anything relative to bonds, it looks like are on the list. We do have reports of enforcement. One of the items we had wanted to get update on was about, was the pending matter about Supreme Sheds, but that's been taken care of now that we have an application for this. So that's taken care of. The commission had prior wanted to see about a, whatever type of permit for the new restaurant going to Sherwoods, but it looks like having looked into things that I guess you, have looked into, I know, I think you looked into it also, Delia, that restaurant was a special permit evidently previously. Is that correct, John?
Yeah, and as it turns out, back in 2007, I was actually the applicant's representative, on the other side of the table with you guys. So I received that application from you.
Okay, and I know the commission then, in that case, then, we have in your memo, and I know I had asked for some clarification, so thank you for putting it in a memo. At this time, based upon your review of things, whether you've inspected it or not, is conforming to the current status of what that special permit was granted. I don't know if there were any conditions on it at the time. But
There
there's
were.
nothing.
There were no conditions. It is a new restaurant going into the exact same space as the other restaurant, so there is no need for further review.
And so from a
From a zoning
ZEO point of view. So from a ZEO point of view, there's nothing that's changing any conditions that you're aware of based upon your review or inspection or whatever. It would then be fine relative to the existing special permit. Is that what you're telling the commission and what's in your memo?
Precisely.
Okay, we'll just note that for the record. Joe at 11?
Yeah, just some questions that came to mind. The outdoor seating, which was something that obviously took place during COVID. I expect that was not part of the original special permit, but was allowed for during the governor's executive orders to allow it for dining. I can't tell if it's been removed or if that's part of the new plan for the new owner of the restaurant.
And we can ask that of you, John, but John, do you know in the file, I thought that after there was, I think that was codified into law. After orders, and my understanding, I thought was they had submitted something at some point to continue that outdoor. I don't know if that was in the file or not, or are they planning then to, I don't know the status of that.
I'm sorry, what was codified?
Well, there was during the pandemic, the governor's executive order regarding outdoor seating.
Right, that expired. It was codified last year by the General Assembly to extend until April of this year. We're now past April, so that law is expired, and as of right, outdoor dining at the state level is expired, and so any outdoor dining would now revert to local permitting.
So they're not planning to do outdoor dining, are they, that you know of?
I have not received any indication that they are interested in it.
What? Okay, all right, so we just need to note then, because if they were to want to do that, they would just have to seek whatever permitting process to do it if they wish to avail themselves of it. Through the office, or however that has to. I don't know if that's a modification or I don't know how.
Yeah,
that's
it would probably be a modification. I just did a quick scan of your zoning regulations, searching for the term outdoor. Outdoor dining is not explicitly anticipated or envisioned as part of your regulations. However, obviously, we do know that there are restaurants in town. The once I don't know if it's still Sweet Olena's or if it's already changed its name. Certainly does have some outdoor dining. That would, to my mind, be a modification of a special permit use, which would require a special permit, particularly because in a situation where restaurants are on septic systems, outdoor dining could also represent expansion of the number of people seated and therefore the volume of wastewater that could be generated. So certainly the health department would want to review any expanded seating, whether it's indoor or outdoor.
And I know relative to Sweet Evelina's and even the Thai restaurant, we had given prior approval for the outdoor seating and dining some time ago for those places. So I'm just asking just because we just want to make certain whatever is clear on the record. So that's why, the commission did want to make certain that things were reviewed or, looked into, relative to that. Did that answer your question, Joe?
Yes, I just wanted to be clear that if the applicant comes to John because there's been a statement about no conditions on the original special permit, that it's not assumed that because there are no conditions, it could automatically allow. So I'm glad to hear that if the applicant decides they want to do outdoor dining at some point, they have to come for a modification of the special permit. So glad that's clear.
And it's not a prohibited use, certainly, so it's nice to see a restaurant continue there. So that's very nice to see. Did you have something further, Joe? Did I know you had something then, Sid, but Joe?
Yeah, I just wanted to ask, Delia, I thought at our last meeting, you were suggesting that there was a good reason to have some kind of either zoning permit to keep track of businesses that,
Be a permit.
okay,
If no one reviews it, then there's no record of what changes take place. So I'm not the zoning officer anymore, but I was for 12
yeah,
years.
yeah.
And so it makes it hard for a zoning officer now or in the future to do their job when they don't have a record of what was taking place.
So
and
what kind of
changed.
what kind of record would help create that history?
The commission has been requiring non-residential zoning permits on properties that had grandfathered businesses,
Okay.
and we haven't had a lot of special permits turnover. So I don't remember what was documented, but some sort of document was reviewed to make sure that the new business is in compliance with the previous approval. It doesn't have to be a permit, it could be some other kind of review, it could be done by the zoning officer. But if no review is done, then it's hard to document when changes take place.
That's right, and I'm just trying to understand what we might recommend the CEO create in order to have a record.
You can
In the
ask
file.
them.
All right. John, can you hear me?
I can, yes.
Okay, Delia brings up a good point about trying to keep track of the history of ownership and changes in a land use or property use. And I think I'm using the word non-residential zoning permit, but it says that's doesn't have to be a permit, but just some kind of record that the CEO is reviewing the new business to some extent and putting a record in the file, presumably Sherwood's file or the new owner's file.
Street file.
Street file, okay, in the street file. So that if in the future somebody else comes in, there's a track record of what's been happening at that location, but by name and. So is there something you could recommend that could go into the street record file of the new owner and a review that you've made of their intentions and plans?
Well, from a zoning standpoint, not necessarily. Presumably, if a new owner was going in and was doing any interior renovations, as I would generally anticipate other, or if a change of restaurant, so when Roots Down changed over to the Thai restaurant, or when it used to be Rustica, there are some building permits that get pulled for changing of lighting, changing of furniture, or the fixtures. So that would be in the land use file in the building department. If literally nothing changes, which is to say, it goes from one pizzeria to another, like it goes from Frank's Pizzeria to Don's Pizzeria, and nothing on the inside changes. It's just a matter of ownership, and there's nothing to review, and therefore nothing that would be useful to the file. If they're changing the signage that says went from Joe's to Frank's, there would be a record in there because they would have to pull a building and signage permit. So in that sense, there would be something. But if all we're talking about is a change of ownership, then no, there's really not a reason to have something in the zoning file.
I would say I agree with Joe Adelette. I think it is helpful for the record, but I think it's also helpful for the owners that there is something put in there. There's to show what is happening in a timeline. So that way, if anybody questions, it's just clear, just all around.
Well, so for instance, if
I'm actually still talking, John, so I have the floor right now, if you don't mind. But I think it is helpful to have something in. This has been the practice of the commission over the years. It's just to say there is nothing new, and it just shows the timeline. But I think it also helps the owners because anything that happens from a building permit point of view isn't anything that happens relative to what zoning does or what a CEO necessarily reviews. I just think it's good. And again, the practice of this commission has been to try to make certain we have very clear records. Because sometimes when we've, in the past, had to go and look at things that's been done and things weren't clear, sometimes having to go way, way back. It's created issues for applicants, for the commission, for staff to try to figure out what happened at any point in time. So even though it's nothing that's going to tag the new owners in any way, it just will show in the records on that street file that, you know, something has changed ownership. That's great. And that there is nothing new needed at this time. And that's fine. That just clarifies it. So that way, if anything has to be reviewed at a later point, the timeline is clear as far as different points. That's been the practice of the commission in many regards, trying to make certain we have clear records that can be accessed, you know, for whatever reason. We've done that in many regards. So I think that would be very helpful. I'll open up to other commissioners on, you know, what they think. But did you have something then to follow up, John?
I guess I'm just, so when you refer to the street file, that's the town assessor record, not a zoning record. And a building file is again different from zoning. If nothing has happened with zoning, I'm not sure what the record would be for zoning. Again, you know, changes of use, I'm sorry, changes of features, let's say, and changes of ownership are tracked by town hall and are matters of permanent record, for instance, in the building permit files and in the assessment files. If all is changing is a restaurant is sold by one person to another, there is nothing substantive to put in zoning. Obviously, there are lots of ways to track it in the public record, but it's not an independent zoning matter.
Celia, and then I'm going to recognize Sid.
Sure, in Woodstock, as you've noticed in the land use office, there's very little in the way of any sort of records on every property. So zoning permits and building permits are stored in the same file, and they call them street files in Woodstock. They're not referring to the assessment records.
Okay.
Sid?
What I consider a very large sign or billboard that's lit up, puts us an exit. I think that was installed after our review and approval of the application. I'm just curious, is that considered an on-site directional sign, and wondering whether it meets the requirements for zoning ordinance?
Which sign are you referring to? The big one that lists all the multiple?
No, it's almost at the intersection with Senexit.
It's
Slow a little bit, lit up. It's about 4x8 or thereabouts.
Oh, it needs to meet sign regulations and lighting regulations, like all signs.
If it doesn't, so I guess I don't know if this is a legal question, but if it doesn't, it's not in compliance. Is the new owner allowed to use it? Or is this an opportunity to have that clarified and corrected?
I don't know. Is that the sign there previously? Not the sign that's up ahead over the thing that can't be internally lit, that we said couldn't be, but the separate one.
Right up the road.
Okay.
The second one right on
Because
the
each
side.
business owner is allowed a certain amount of total square footage of signs. And there's a easy, simple formula we have in place, so it would have to be compliant. I don't know, we can ask Rich, but is it, that was the sign that was there previously and now is being used new, or it's a brand new one?
No, it's been there for a few years, but I think it was put up after the initial application, and I'm not sure whether it complies or not.
That would be for the CEO to looking at the zoning and lighting regulations for signs, and making certain that whatever formula we have is within the total square footage allowed for any business and size of any individual sign, I guess. Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, so, John, this is Sid Blunt, is that, may not be clear, but is that something you can look into, whether they comply with the sign and lighting regulations?
So this is I believe there's a separate piece of land. It's a triangular piece of land, and is this right on the corner of Senexit, or is it just beyond the parking lot of Sherwood?
Between the two, I'd say it's closer to the exit than the parking lot to the plaza.
I thought at the time when that came up and we discussed about it after it was put up, that there was some discussion about not allowing any changes. To it. That whatever it was, and there was some discussion we had, including with the owner. That was some years ago. We have to pull the file. But it went up and we didn't know about it ahead of time, and then some questions were raised, looked into. About is that allowed, is that not allowed? It's the one that's, as you just go literally right past the street before you hit Sherwood's, because you're heading towards it. It's like right there, that billboard, right, is type. And we had raised questions about it. And I thought at the time, when we had then reviewed it after the fact, there was some discussion about couldn't make any changes with it, not remove it, but it, right, but it was something, there was something, right, that's kind of right there.
Yeah.
We'd have to pull the meeting minutes. There was some discussion and something the commission, I think, decided about it.
This thing with the change of ownership, maybe some changes to the application, whether this is a good opportunity to deal with this.
So basically, it's a non-permitted sign at this point.
I thought I had a permit, but I don't remember being illuminated.
Yeah, there were some, I remember we had discussions about it, about is it a billboard, was it not a billboard, whose property it was, you know. I remember even having discussions about, well, is it far enough off the road for DOT to be okay with? And I think, I forget when that was, I didn't bring that file, but I remember it was, and we can find out what meeting minutes that's in, but there were a bunch of discussions and questions asked. And I think the commission did find out that it was legally allowed, but not put certain things on that, saying it couldn't be expanded, couldn't bore them up. There were some things that were discussed. I don't remember the details, but that is a good point, Sid. That would need to be revisited because of the issue. I don't know if the new owners are gonna use that sign or not, but, and whose property that is, sits on. But all that will have to be looked into. We'll have to go back and find those meeting minutes that the commission had discussions about.
All right, thank you.
So that's something, John, you'll be able as CEO to look into, since question about the
Yes,
signage and the lighting
Yep.
relative to what's allowed. Because we did streamline and did make more flexible signage in town and still have the lighting regulations. But that is I guess, an outlier just because of how that is in there. I don't think there's anything else other businesses have like that.
Right.
That haven't been grandfathered in, but that was not grandfathered in, but we did have a whole host of discussions. So that can be looked into.
Sure, I'll look into it, but again, unless something is proposed to be substantially changed or expanded on it, you know, just changing the content of the sign within the existing dimensions is not, would not be a review matter. Because again, it's there, it has been there, it is allowed to be there. And as long as it's not being expanded, it may remain.
And I understand that, but this is the commission's directive. And the commission does interpret the regulations, so if the commission is asking, I can put that in a letter if you would like.
Thank you.
On file, but that's what the commission is asking to be done, to look into it. So I think that's helpful to look into, so that also can be very clear on the record. That's also helpful for whoever owns that sign or whatever, that with any change of ownership, this has been looked into and things are fine, then that's good. That way it's all been clarified and just moves forward. So that way there's no confusion or anything. So I think that is, that's how the commission has been practicing for many years to make certain that things are clear for everybody. So that can be looked into. So thank you. Did you have anything else, Sid?
Just
Or
No.
Joe?
How did we end up on the earlier discussion of record and file? Just curious.
So I guess your question is what, Joe? Are we going to have
We end up
something?
with a discussion on having some information filed without necessarily being a permit, but maybe a narrative of the conversation between the CEO and the applicant about what was intended for the location. To just document that and memorialize it somehow to put it in the file, so there's track record.
Okay, John, did you have any further thoughts or discussions on what Joanna Letters asking us to loop back to make certain we come to some sort of conclusion on that request?
If I'm hearing Joe's request to put something in the file about conversations verifying no changes are being proposed?
It sounds like you had a conversation already or some conversations with the applicant and you're satisfied that there's no change from restaurant operation of Sherwood's to restaurant operation of the applicant. That's what I'm assuming, based on your comments. All I'm asking is, to summarize that in a short document or note memo, put into the file about the substance of the conversation that you had, so that if there's any change in that operation later on, we'll know it's not following the basis of your original discussion.
I see. Okay.
Thank you, John. And again, this is all part of the commission's practice over many years to make certain we have clear records and everything's clear. So it doesn't trip up any owners or applicants in any way or anything that has to be looked at, say 10 years from now. So we can not get back to some of the situations we've encountered previously where we couldn't figure things out. Things became a jumble. And those go back many, many years, some of those files. So we just want to make certain we cross the T's and dot the I's, so that way anybody looking in the file is just clear. And everybody is covered for that. So thank you, John. And certainly it is nice to see a new restaurant go in there. So wish it all the best and success moving forward for it. Anything else from commissioners? Yes, Joe.
Just a question of information. Is this restaurant supplied by a public water supply line or public sewer?
There's no public water.
No, I believe it's private well and septic.
Okay,
And they'll certainly have to meet, I'm sure they've done already, all whatever public health. codes,
just
You know,
so everybody knows there's no sewer line and water line.
okay. Anything else on that? Okay. Anything else relative to enforcement, John, to let us know about? I know you did send us your memo, so thank you for doing that and sending us your ZEO report in general, which is very helpful. But anything further to discuss with the commission?
Only if people have questions, happy to answer.
Anybody have any other questions or discussions? I don't. Sid, or I don't know. Go ahead. Sid? did you have something? I'll open it up to you, certainly.
Thank you. I'm looking at John and Robin's email from, or memo rather, from June 14th, yesterday. It addresses both Sherwood's, which we've talked about. Also talks about Buck's soft serve. I think it's just an interesting coincidence, and I don't know if we're allowed to talk about this, but Mr. Linton's letter that he distributed this evening, which I see some interesting parallels between the two businesses. Mr. Linton's letter about Treehouse gets into the issues of primary uses, secondary uses, what's defined as agriculture, what constitutes a farm. Jumping back to Buck's soft serve, I just wonder if there's similar issues here about is this ice cream stand or dairy bar the primary use of property, or is it really a farm that has this secondary or accessory use that Mr. Linton brings up in his discussion about Treehouse Brewing? I think it's an interesting coincidence. Wondering if this commission is going to talk about Bucks at some point, or
If you wish to bring it up for discussion, we have the ZEO here, and we do have a memo. Zoning stuff, so. And discuss it if you wish.
well,
Or
I
if you
would
have any
like to
questions.
perhaps at the next meeting. I'm trying to listen, participate, and also read Mr. Linton's letter, and I don't think I've given it a fair chance yet to read the whole thing or to understand it or see if there are any parallels between it Bucks and what the direction is the town's going in Bucks. So, I guess just from my perspective, I'd like to put it on next month's agenda.
I guess one question I have for you, John, is knowing the history of this and what the commission has stated previously, including what I know Dan Malo was working with and had passed on to you and your colleagues, is this permit that you're reviewing been finalized?
The zoning permit?
Because the commission seems to be divorced from this right now, contrary to what had gone on before. So I'm just trying to understand where we are in the process of reviewing. I mean, your memo to clarify went out to commissioners yesterday as soon as I received it. But I just want to know, where are we in the process?
Where we are is, they have submitted a administrative zoning permit for the use, and I'm in process of reviewing it, and had been, reviewing it against the, record of their now expired home occupation permit and the commission's discussion relative to, the home occupation use that was held, I believe, in 2019, a few years ago. So it's not finalized, but I think, as I indicated in my memo, I'm relatively confident that that the proposed permitting pathway, which is to say administrative zoning permit, is the correct one based on the regulations. But it has not been approved yet.
That answer, I guess that just lets us, I just wanted to know where we stood with it, because to understand your memo, that's all. Did we have anything from, did you have anything else, Sid?
Well, can we talk about this next month? Can John hold off? Can John get a copy of what Mr. Linton distributed this evening and see if this raises any issues or concerns about granting Bucks permission to operate as a farm? And this dairy bar or restaurant or ice cream stand, this being kind of a secondary or accessory use, or a much greater operation, which apparently is honey and syrup and couple animals.
So it already is a farm. They don't need a permit to be a farm.
Right, well, Treehouse told us the same thing, but now that's being questioned, and if you get the opportunity to look at Mr. Linton's letter, you might start to question what's primary use at Bucks, what's secondary, and is this dairy bar a done deal?
So you're asking, Sid, that we discuss this further at our next monthly business meeting, or the meeting we have the first week of July? What's that date? The 6th?
Whatever you and staff feel is appropriate time-wise.
Well,
Oh,
I'm sorry.
go ahead, John.
I guess if what Sid is asking that I read this or this resubmitted piece of correspondence about an unrelated property in the light of my current view of Bucks permitting, I'm happy to read it. Sure.
Are you asking, Sid, that we bring this up next month for further discussion, or are you asking that any permit review be put on hold until this can be discussed?
Yeah,
I understand what you're.
I don't want to delay Buck's business. Again, it's just kind of an interesting coincidence that this is all presented here tonight together. And if John and or Delia feel like Bucks is a completely different, no pun intended, animal, and wrong in my thinking, then that's fine. I just think Bucks has had a significant impact on that neighborhood, and to see it continue without any kind of public input or review by this commission just is surprising and unfortunate.
Did you have something, Joe? And then I'll get to the other. Joe had a letter?
Yeah, just gonna ask, I see in John's notes that he's had, he mentioned he's had a number of conversations with the owners. And I was just wondering if he's had any conversations with you, Jeff, to get a little background on what transpired. I know he obviously hasn't had conversations with the commission, but perhaps he was talking to you as the chair to learn about what was happening and what the expectation, I think, of the commission was at the time the home occupation permit was to expire. I think the commission felt that it was really a special permit type of application that would need to be applied for. So I was just wondering, that's my first question. Did he have conversations with you, since he's had a lot of conversations with you?
No, any CEO since Dan Malo left has not reached out to me in my capacity as chair. My understanding is Dan Malo did pass on information relative to discussions with this commission and where we stood relative to wanting to make certain that things were looked into for the expiring at the time home occupation permit. I did in communication let the CEO know that there has been prior stuff that had gone on, just so that way that it's clear, you know, as far as when this memo, when I received the memo. But otherwise, I've not had any discussions. Other than having to request clarification memo, which then was received, and I sent it out as soon as I could the same day it was received. I otherwise have not had discussions or communication.
Okay.
In my capacity as chair for the commission to be noted, I should say. I otherwise don't do the CEO work. So that type of stuff in the office happens, as it happens in the office. But otherwise, we do have the memos, so.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, John?
So, no, I'll back that up just to answer, if I might, Joe Adelaide's question. From my perspective, no, I did not speak directly to the chairman about previous commission decisions. I reviewed the public record, which I thought was be a more appropriate representation of the commission's feeling. I reviewed all the minutes from the public hearing that was held, I believe, in October of 2019. And I read the regulations, which is my primary charge.
Okay, but then you also had a lot of conversation with the applicant, which makes sense. I was just hoping with you seeing some of the background and history of this particular application, that you might have felt it useful to speak to the commission to get the commission's sense of what's necessary. The
Right.
second part of that note from John was indicating retail sale taking place and just reviewed our record and our definition for agriculture just doesn't include retail sales, and retail sales by our regulations are clearly a permitted use, but it's under a special permitted use in the community district. So
Outdoor retail sales are in your regulations as an accessory use.
missed the first part of that, sorry, John.
Can you just repeat it for us, John?
So outdoor retail sales are an accessory, outdoor retail sales are an accessory building structure or use per your regulations and as accessory to agricultural use and operations.
Retail sales require a special permit. I mean, they're allowed, but they're allowed with a special permit. Anyway, I think that's why it would support Sid's discussion, comment to perhaps have a little bit more in-depth discussion with John about some of the aspects of his interpretation of the regulations and the commission's interpretation.
And I just want to say, it may turn out to be that this process being followed right now by the CEO may turn out to be the right process. I'm not saying it is or it isn't. I think it is helpful, and we've done this in the past with CEOs, to make certain on certain issues, especially when there's been a history that it has been an active item for the commission, working with CEOs, that there is discussion, so that we're aware. And I would encourage that, moving forward, that has been a practice that has worked very well for the commission. And I think for a number of CEOs, I know, I don't want to put you on the spot here, but we did that for many years working with you. And the last CEO, Dan Malo, we did that as well. So I think that's good. I don't think we need to, I think it gets into who actually ultimately makes the final interpretation of zoning regulations. But nevertheless, this may well be the right, I'm not saying it isn't the right process. I just think it's, some questions have been raised. And I think this way we can just get some answers. So it's clear in the record, given what record's been generated to date. And if this turns out that this is the right process, that's fine. I have no problem. I'm very glad that things were able to be worked out for a permit to be submitted in some fashion and that things are moving forward, which is always good. So I appreciate that process moving forward in some regard. But we can certainly have this on our meeting agenda, depending upon when we can get further clarification. Or I guess whatever more information you would like to have, Sid. We can certainly look to see when we can, if that would be the first month of July, first Thursday of July meeting, or the 2 weeks later, we can work that out. And just make certain that whatever gets closed, that the loop gets closed, that it just gets closed overall for whatever the CEO is doing in the land use office, but also what the commission's been doing. And so that way everyone's on the same page, so to speak. And that's always good again for the record, as far as where we are. So to have it move forward. Joe, did you have a question?
Yeah,
I'm sorry, did
just
you have
as
anything
a
more?
point of information, and maybe Rich knows the answer to this. To be classified as a farm, don't you have to sell a certain amount of produce per year to be classified as a farm?
Isn't that for tax purposes?
Yeah.
I don't think for zoning regulation.
Yeah, I mean, under your zoning regulations, there's no requirement of volume like sales.
Under our regulations, there are not, but under IRS, there are.
It's not very much. Like
Yeah, so like
$2,500,
$500.
2,500 to 1,500.
Right, 2,500, but what that does is prevent somebody that sells 2 sheep from calling himself a farm.
Right. Well, the $2,500, or I can't remember, it was 15 or 25, but it's, I should know because I just did it not so long ago, because I have to renew it every so many years, so it's a tax exempt certificate would allow you, so that's the tax issue. And it's a Connecticut thing, it's not a federal thing, it's a state of Connecticut.
Yeah, the sales tax.
Right. So it just goes on what's the sales tax, so I can go down and buy a bag of grain. I don't have to pay a sales tax.
But that's an interesting point. If the principal use is determined as agriculture, but the agricultural sale income is only $1,500, but an accessory use is tens
It's
of thousands of
$30,000.
dollars. What principal use of the
Right,
land?
So in defense of the CEO, really and truly, those regulations need to be reviewed. Because I myself, store on my farm, it's a very small percentage of what my revenue is, but it's still, where is that break off? Where is it, where is that seesaw going here? Maybe their seesaw is the opposite from what mine is, we don't, there's no regulations to govern that. So how do
We had been getting into those previously, and then we had to get into
We really
other
don't
things.
have
that were
any
required.
really, he has no reason to go back and say, it is. They got a tax exempt certificate and they've got they're legally a farm, it is what it is. We don't like it, we've got to make regulations to say.
it'd be kind of nice to know if they have that certificate.
Well, I think for purposes of your regulations, it's irrelevant.
It's what?
Irrelevant. Because you use the definition of agriculture that's in the statute that isn't tied to any kind of revenue. I mean, it could be completely money losing or, no economic benefit as long as the land use is there, that fits within the state statutory definition. I mean, that makes your job easier than splitting hairs about, necessarily percentages of what you're selling, percentages of where it's coming from. You might want to look at that in context of, you know, farm stores, farm stands, that kind of thing. But I think as far as, you know, just kind of the baseline determination as to whether something is or isn't agriculture, you want to stick with the state statutory definition, unless there's a really good reason not to.
And that's how, when we changed definitions long time ago, we said we were gonna go with the state definition as may be amended from time to time. And kept it really that way. Because it's just easier to follow, but for this purposes, it's, you know, there is a permit process in process. And it may well, again, may well turn out, this is the process to follow based on how the regulations are read. I just think it is helpful to have that communication between the land use department and this commission, when there's already been discussions that have been happening. Again, that was with the prior CEO. And I think it's good just to make certain the loop is closed overall, that everything is one way or the other taken care of and clear in the record. Yes, Joe had a
Just
letter.
a quick question for clarity. John's been referring to administrative zoning permit. Term we haven't been using, talk about it.
Mhm.
That, my assumption is administrative means that CEO will address the permit itself as opposed to the commission.
That is correct. That's you, yeah, that would be how that term would be used. Even though we don't routinely use it, that would be correct.
Yeah.
You know, we've delegated some responsibility to the CEO. You know, have discussions about who ultimately interprets regulations, but I think it matters whether it's going to be an administrative process or whatever. It's always good to have that crosstalk, especially when there's already been that crosstalk, actually spanning back, I think, all the way back to your colleague, Mike D'Amato. When things were reviewed some years ago, back in 2018, something like that. So I think there's been that shown history of having that discussions. And since it has been items for us to make certain that we're aware of, we just want to make certain we get that back on track, and then we can see where we are. And again, this may well be the process to follow. It is being followed right now, and we can just cycle back to it and make certain everything is clarified in the record, just not with this commission, but also in the land use department. As I said earlier, it's always good to make certain things are clarified in the record. You know, for that. So I think that's all that this commission is looking to do, just to make certain there's no loose ends one way or the other. Anybody have any other questions on that? As far as when to bring this back up, I was going to ask in a little bit, but I can ask it now. Are we wanting to have the Thursday, July 6th meeting? There have been some years people have said they were going to be away, and we question if we were going to have a quorum because of the July 4th holiday, depending on where that falls on the calendar. But otherwise, right now it's listed because we submitted it to the town clerk. So that hasn't changed. We can always change it if we want, but I'm just asking. I have no problem continuing that, you know, as scheduled. Just depends upon people are going to be around. We're not going to have a quorum if people are going to be away. So, or massively tired out after the jamboree. So, then we can decide accordingly.
Questionable whether I'll be here.
And Delia, you are not here.
Probably on vacation.
Okay, hopefully someplace good. So, but you're not taking us, so,
Yeah, I'm sorry.
that's too bad.
Chance.
I'm always advocating for the commission. So, but, you know, I don't know what commissioners wish to do. It sounds like there's going to be enough people who will be present. I should be around as far as I know.
I'll be here.
Okay. So we'll keep it on the books for now, and if I find out that plans change and we just won't have a quorum, we can always go accordingly. It's not a problem. So whatever we're asking to loop back, sounds like we might be able to do that in time then, Sid, for what you're asking for that meeting.
Okay, yeah.
Does that work for you, John, from a ZEO point of view?
Well,
That would be the-
to be very clear, I'm not hearing anything explicitly requested of me other than Sid's request that I review the correspondence that was resubmitted this evening. Is there
Was
something
there one that you
additional?
wanted?
Yeah, thanks, John. And after reading, Mr. Linton's letter, do you see how that might apply to Buck's application as far as what's agriculture, what's a farm, what's a primary use, what's an accessory use? And maybe you won't have any change of thought, and that's fine. I just want your professional opinion as to that.
Joe?
And I'll ask one other specific thing.
Sure.
Okay, in looking at the regulations, John, the definition for accessory uses certainly indicates a lot of allowable uses, including outdoor retail sales, as you said, but that doesn't mean that they're all allowed by right. Some just need a zoning permit, and some require a special permit, because that was only a definition of accessory uses. So just want to confirm that if there are anticipated retail sales, that to me, that would imply that it falls into the special permit category from that perspective.
May I respond, Mr. Chair?
Sure, please, thank you.
So, right, yeah, Joe, that is the definition, but when I was looking through for agricultural and agricultural uses, and the things that would be customarily accessory to that would be allowable as a zoning permit use in the community district, that's where I went to determine what would be included in those uses. And therefore, what would be allowed as a right in association with the farm.
Okay, I'll look a little more carefully then in the regulations to see where you had found something like that.
Otherwise, my understanding is, John, you're been reviewing and processing the application you have before you, correct?
That is correct. And so again, to be perfectly clear, unless there is a specific directive to the contrary, aside from reviewing the correspondence that Sid asked me to look at from this evening, if as the zoning officer in my interpretation that this permit is a legitimate zoning permit that can be approved by the zoning officer, barring an explicit request to the contrary, it will be processed.
And that will be in a report that you'll give to the commission?
Yeah, it would show, if it's approved, it would show up in next month's activity report.
Yep, because it will, on that report, where we see all the permits from the last meeting, that's what I was referring to, it will show along with any other permits you've issued.
Correct.
Will show there, okay.
But that wouldn't be approved before July 6th.
I don't know, is a request to hold the permit decision until?
If it's
July
not clear,
6th
then
meeting?
I will make that a request to hold the approval of that zoning permit until at least after the July 6th meeting. The point of talking about it at July 6th is to get an understanding, and just want to make sure we're holding off on the decision until after July 6th.
Did you hear that, John?
I did. I heard it from a commissioner, with all due respect to Joe.
I'll open up for discussion, commission, what the commission wants to do as far as, let me just ask,
Does you want a specific request from the chair?
well, it wouldn't be from me, it would have to be the commission, because I don't have that authority. I just know there's a permit being processed, that's why I'd asked John, you know, is he still moving forward with the permit? He said he is, so there's a process already now happening. With that, let me just ask Rich, because I just want to make certain, from a legal point of view, can the commission request if this, for example, if a ZEO, I'll just use a generic question, if a ZEO has made a determination to proceed a certain way administratively, but a commission has concerns that it might not be, maybe it turns out it's going to be correct, but the commission wants to make certain things are clarified. Is that something the commission can ask to hold as far as who interprets the regulation ultimately?
Well, the ZEO is the one who issues the permits. I think for purposes of what you're talking about tonight, you can make a request that he not issue a permit until after you've had a chance to discuss it on July 6th. if that's what you want to do.
Is that request in the form of a motion?
I would assume so, at least that way there's something on the record for him to, kind of react to.
Then I'm moved that we ask the CEO to hold on this approval of that zoning application until at least July 6th,
Let me write this down then.
after our meeting.
Get it. So you're asking then, you're asking that we to hold on a decision on this permit that's been received?
Well, we haven't seen it. There has been an application.
Okay, I just want to make certain I'm clear. So a decision about, till after the commission meeting on July 6th? Okay, let me just ask a question of John. Is there any, would this cause, if you're aware of, if you were to be, if you were to hold on your decision for how many weeks is that? That's 2 weeks? 2 weeks, would that be causing anything undue or in any harmful way to the applicant that we know of or that you know of? Or is this something then that will just be 2 weeks for this request for our meeting, as far as how this is relative to an ongoing review and pending decision?
Yeah, it would just be time. I'm not, I've made no action at this point to ask Bucks to cease and desist operations, because they've responded in good faith to the notice of violation and submitted, quite quickly a zoning permit. So they're acting in good faith. I see no reason to ask them to hold off on their operations for now.
So I wasn't saying that. What I was saying was that I wouldn't be looking to do that because they have submitted an application, but would there be anything you're aware of that while they're still operating, that this would cause any potential harm to an applicant, to the applicant, if one were to wait 2 weeks? That
Well,
you are based upon what they're requesting.
No, I suppose just the discomfort of sitting on pins and needles for a couple of weeks.
Okay. I just wanted to make certain we're aware, because I don't know what's in the application, so I don't know if there's anything time sensitive or not. That's why I was asking. Make certain we're not creating anything that we just might need to know about. But we have, you made the motion, Joe?
I did.
Secondable.
Do we have any further discussion on the motion? Or anything else for that? I just want to make certain this motion is clear, John, as far as what the intent of the motion is, or I just want to make certain we've answered any of your questions relative to the motion.
It's clear to me. Thank you.
Okay. Is there anything further on this? Okay. We'll go through the roll. Joe Adaletta.
Aye.
Sid Blodgett.
Aye.
Present. I'm going to abstain. Dean Gould.
Nay.
Jeff Marcotte.
Aye.
David Morse.
Aye.
Joe Plula.
Hi.
Here, Dwight Reynolds.
Aye.
Timothy Young.
I'm gonna abstain.
That passes, even with the abstentions. So then this will be on for our next meeting on July 6th. And again, as I mentioned before, this might be the right process that's followed, and that's fine if it turns out to be. This will just, I guess, answer some questions that some commissioners have. But I think it'll be helpful overall to make certain from a commission point of view and the ZL point of view, everything is just clarified and on the record. And that way, everything, whatever, however it gets adjudicated, everything is done kind of at the same time. So there's nothing either pending in your office, John, that we think is finalized, or nothing that you are thinking we've finalized and we're still pending something relative to the commission. This way we just get everything on the same page and can move forward. That makes sense. Okay. So we'll note that for the July 6th meeting, and I'll have to flag it. So I can put that on the agenda. Does anyone have anything else relative to the reports we have? From the CEO, and John, there's no home occupation permit applications, is my understanding, for us to have a
That is-
discussion with you about.
That is correct.
Okay. Well, thank you for the reports,
Thank you.
and for discussing things with the commission. I'll ask the commission, since I don't know if that clock is right. Evidently it is 9:20. Did we want to take up commercial cannabis regulations tonight? Or what do we wish to do? This is why I moved something up, because I wanted to sort of get to some of these reports that needed to be evidently flagged. Joe?
Just ask if you might ask if anybody in the audience.
Yeah, I will.
Take a-
Yeah, I just wanted to see what the commission thought. Because if we wanted to move forward, fine. You know, I have a problem with it. If we feel, given where we are on the clock, we could then take it up at our July 6th. If we wish. That agenda hasn't been written. Is there anybody here for the commercial cannabis? Not that we're dispensing it, but to discuss it. If we say we're dispensing, we'll have a room full of people, I can tell you that. So it'll be the most popular commission in town. I'm not gonna ask for legal advice. Okay, so then what we'll do is we'll just note that we'll take that up July 6th. We've already gotten documents sent out. You sent out to everybody, Delia? Yep. Yeah, so. So if anybody doesn't have a copy of that, then let us know and we can get the copy again. Budget review and bills, there isn't much that I've noticed here. We do get the report. I think we've once again been very good. With taxpayer money. Looks like a couple of commissioners are on the payroll today. Well, we did get, people did get reimbursed for attending. Reimbursed.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So, but actually, we usually don't seek reimbursement because it's not, you know, I think this Connecticut bar land use seminars, what, every 2 years?
Yep.
Yeah, so it fell on this year, very good. It didn't cost a lot of money, but it's actually really good for commissioners. It does satisfy the training that we're supposed to do. Speaking of that, the legislature did make a change. I was actually in the process of submitting an amendment to get rid of the CME requirements because I think it's burdensome, but before I could do that, it managed to make its way into the consent calendar. And the change that was put in, I don't know where this came from, that a member of a planning and zoning commission, planning or zoning, if it's not combined, who's a lawyer and has served for at least 4 years, would then be exempt. I have no clue where that came from. I actually did talk with people on planning and development. They weren't even aware of it or what didn't make their radar screen. But I personally don't think that we should be tagging municipal people with all these extra burdens, but that seems to have been going in, including for Board of Ed members and many other people. But that was an interesting twist that nothing against lawyers, but I was gonna try to make some changes to that. But evidently, I don't know if the governor signed it or not yet, but it's likely to go into effect. So if you're a lawyer and you've served at least 4 years, you're exempt from any of the CMA. So, but if
And I
you,
was accused of orchestrating.
yeah, I saw it literally when it hit the floor of the Senate. And I was gonna make some changes to say, well, why only lawyers? Why don't we say anybody who served a certain number of years, or just get rid of the requirement? But things rapidly get put onto consent calendar and move through, so I was unable to extract it from consent calendar, and I didn't want to vote no on a consent, because evidently that creates a massive problem. I was told, but I didn't want to do that. So just, if you want to be a lawyer and serve 4 years and be exempt, otherwise, there's nothing relative to the bills, and we still have that POCD fund, which I forget what we're due next to update the POCD. But whenever that is, we have money. Yeah, we do have money still in that fund. for that, so that's still a good amount of money. For us to do whatever work we will need to do in the future, on that, so. I don't believe, do we have any other citizens' comments, not anything already discussed on our agenda? Correspondence, I'm not aware of any correspondence that we've received. That takes us evidently to agenda item 12, which I believe is Commissioner Young's moment to shine. Move to adjourn. Second. Who seconded that? You did, okay. So motion by Young, seconded by Poole to adjourn. We don't discuss those types of motions. I'll go through the roll. Joe Adaletta. Aye. Mark Black, oh, he's not seated. Sid Blodgett.
Aye.
Jeff Gordon. I will vote aye on that one. Dean Gould. Aye. Jeff Marcotte. Aye. David Morse.
Aye.
Joe Cooley. Aye. Dwight Reinowitz. Aye. And Timothy Young. Aye. Without objection, that's so fast, whatever time you have it. Thank you, everybody, for attending.